I did not set out to save a queen. On the morning everything changed, I was just another contract salvager drifting at the edge of civilized space, running outdated scans on a dead system no one had bothered to name properly. My ship, the Wayfarer's Debt, creaked like an old animal every time I adjusted thrust, and the warning lights along the console glowed with the quiet resignation of machines that had long given up hope. The distress signal was weak, ancient, fragmented, almost buried beneath cosmic noise. Most pilots would have ignored it. Signals like that were usually traps, ghosts, or automated beacons left behind by civilizations that had already turned to dust. But something about it felt deliberate, not panicked, not random, structured. I followed it to a shattered ring world orbiting a dim red star. The structure was broken open like a cracked bone, its interior exposed to vacuum. Whatever war had done this had been thorough and merciless. Massive chunks of habitat drifted in slow, silent arcs, casting long shadows that swallowed my ship as I maneuvered closer. That was when my scanners found her. Life signs, singular, stable, heavily shielded, deep within one of the remaining intact segments. Against my better judgment, I docked. The interior of the ring was colder than space itself, not in temperature, but in feeling. The corridors were pristine yet abandoned, the walls etched with unfamiliar symbols that shimmered faintly when my suit lights passed over them. This place hadn't been looted. It had been sealed. A prison, not a ruin. I followed the signal to a chamber guarded by a field so advanced my equipment couldn't even classify it. At its center stood a transparent containment column, glowing softly with pale blue light. Inside was a woman. She was tall, regal even in stillness, her skin a luminous silver blue that caught the light like moonlit water. A delicate circlet rested against her brow, fused seamlessly with her biology. Her eyes, closed at first, fluttered open as I approached. And when they met mine, the room seemed to breathe. "You are not one of them," she said, her voice resonating directly in my mind. I froze. "I don't think so." A faint smile touched her lips, tired but unmistakably real. "Then fate has finally grown bored of tormenting me. That was how I met Queen Athira of the Lithari Dominion, though I didn't know her name yet, and I certainly didn't know the consequences of what I was about to do. Freeing her wasn't easy. The field resisted every attempt, adapting faster than my tools could compensate. It was Athira herself who guided me, her thoughts brushing mine like gentle pressure, pointing out weaknesses in the containment lattice. "They feared me," she explained as the field began to flicker. "So they did not kill me. They caged me, hoping my existence alone would fracture my people." "Who are they?" I asked. Her expression darkened. "Those who feared a united galaxy." The moment the field collapsed, gravity shifted violently. Alarms, long dormant, screamed to life. The ring world began to tear itself apart, structural fails cascading outward like a chain reaction. I grabbed her hand, without thinking. She was warm, solid, real. We ran. By the time we reached the Wayfarer's Debt, debris was already slamming into the hull. I shoved her into the co-pilot seat and launched blind, trusting instinct more than sensors. The jump drive screamed in protest, but it held, barely, tearing us out of the dying system in a burst of fractured light. When we emerged into hyperspace, silence fell. I slumped back, breath shaking. "Okay," I muttered. "So, you want to tell me why saving you just made half the galaxy angry?" Athira looked at me, not as a ruler surveying a subject, but as someone seeing another person clearly for the first time in a very long while. "I am the last crowned queen of my people," she said softly. "And you have just undone a war that has been festering for centuries." That should have been my cue to drop her at the nearest neutral station and disappear. Instead, she stayed. At first, it was necessity. The Lithari dominion had been shattered, its world scattered or occupied. Assassins hunted her through proxy factions and mercenary fleets. The Wayfarer's debt became a moving sanctuary, constantly on the run. But as weeks turned into months, something changed. She didn't isolate herself or command me like a monarch. She learned how my ship worked, how humans ate, how we laughed in the face of impossible odds. She listened to my stories about failed ventures and near-death escapes with genuine curiosity. And she refused to leave my side. "You could hide anywhere," I told her one night as we drifted beyond a blue gas giant, its storms painting the viewport in violent beauty. "There are worlds that would worship you." "I was worshipped once," she replied. "It did not save my people." She turned toward me then, her presence filling the cramped cockpit in a way that had nothing to do with size. "You saved me not because of who I am," she continued, "but because you saw someone suffering and chose to act. I will not abandon that." Trouble found us anyway. A coalition fleet cornered us near the Karen Expanse, their ships bristling with weapons far beyond anything my salvager could handle. Their ultimatum was simple: surrender the Queen or be erased. I expected fear. What I got was resolve. Athira stood beside me on the bridge, her hand resting lightly on my shoulder. "They believe I am a symbol," she said calmly. "Let us show them I am more." She interfaced with the ship, not through cables or consoles, but through thought. Ancient Lithari systems hidden in her circlet activated, awakening dormant technology embedded within the Wayfarer's debt from a previous, forgotten owner. Energy surged. Space bent. The battle was brief and decisive. Enemy ships found their weapons failing, their formations unraveling as if reality itself had turned against them. When it was over, the surviving vessels fled, broadcasting panic across every channel. The galaxy noticed. News spread quickly. The captive queen had returned, and she was no longer alone. Allies emerged from the shadows, fractured Lithari enclaves, neutral systems tired of living under fear, even former enemies seeking redemption. A movement formed, not around conquest, but restoration. And through it all, Athira stayed at my side. When at last we reached the rebuilt Lithari homeworld, a place of crystal cities and living light, I expected her to leave me behind, to ascend a throne reclaimed through sacrifice and hope. Instead, she took my hand before the gathered council. "This is the one who freed me," she declared. "The one who stood when I had nothing but chains and memory. I will not rule without him." The chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. I leaned toward her, whispering, "You know I'm just a guy with a broken ship, right?" She smiled, the same tired, sincere smile from the containment chamber. "And I am just a queen who refuses to be alone again." In the end, I didn't save a captive queen. I found a partner who had crossed centuries of darkness and still chose to stand beside me, not out of obligation, but choice. And in a galaxy finally learning how to heal, that choice mattered more than any throne. The celebrations lasted for cycles. Lithari citizens came from far-flung worlds, streaming into the crystal cities with gifts, music, and songs of welcome. Statues were raised, monuments erected, not to me, but to the unity I had helped restore alongside Athira. Yet throughout the pomp and ceremony, she never left my side. At night, when the council chambers were empty and the city lights shimmered like flowing liquid glass, she would sit beside me on the observation terraces, her hand lightly brushing mine, eyes reflecting the swirling nebulae beyond. "You've changed everything," I said quietly one evening, the words half awe, half disbelief. "No," she corrected softly. We changed everything. Together. In time, the galaxy began to recognize our partnership, not a ruler and subject, not a queen and her savior, but two equals, bound by trust, courage, and choice. The Lithari Dominion slowly reformed, guided by Athira's wisdom and tempered by my perspective from the stars. Conflicts that had simmered for centuries found resolution, alliances formed, and old enemies became uneasy but lasting friends. And through it all, she never left my side. Even as the weight of leadership pressed upon her, she looked to me, not for orders, but for understanding, for companionship. One quiet evening, hovering above the restored capital, she leaned against me and said, "I used to believe my life was defined by chains and captivity. Now it's defined by choice." I smiled, a sense of peace settling over me that I had never known. "And your choice is me?" "Yes," she said simply, "and mine is forever." The galaxy was vast, unpredictable, and dangerous. But with Athira beside me, I realized that even the darkest corners of space could be faced without fear. The captive queen I saved had refused to leave my side, not out of obligation, but because, in all the chaos and ruin, we had found something neither of us had expected: home. And in that, the stars themselves seemed to shine a little brighter, as if bearing witness to a bond forged not by crown or conquest, but by courage, trust, and love.